I remember the first time I met him, Ryan Holloway, walking into the office like he'd just been elected president of the universe. Bright suit, fake smile, and completely clueless about what our company actually did. "Call me Ryan," he said. "We're going to do big things." I'd been here for 10 years. I didn't need him to tell me. The only big thing about to happen was a systematic disaster. My name is Infam. I'm the systems architecture director at ZentraCore. Or at least I was until last Friday. I've spent a decade building the backbone of this company's technology. Every line of code, every server connection, every data pipeline. I've had my hands in all of it. The previous CEO, Marcus, understood the value of what I'd created. That's why he encouraged me to patent my work 3 years ago. "It's your intellectual property," Marcus had said. "We'll license it from you. That way, everyone wins." The arrangement worked beautifully. I got recognition for my innovation. The company got exclusive rights to use my system architecture, and I received a modest licensing fee on top of my salary. The board approved it unanimously. Our legal team drafted the licensing agreement, everyone was happy. Then ZentraCore was acquired, and everything changed. Ryan Holloway arrived with his entourage of consultants and growth experts from his previous stint selling designer kitchen appliances. The irony wasn't lost on me. A man who'd made his name marketing blenders was now in charge of one of the most sophisticated enterprise software companies in the market. During his first company-wide meeting, Ryan stood on the stage with his perfectly tailored suit and over-whitened smile. "I'm not a tech guy," he announced proudly, as if ignorance was a badge of honor. "I'm a business guy, and business is about people, not computers." The engineers exchanged glances. I felt my stomach tighten. "We're going to streamline operations," he continued. "Cut the fat, move fast, break things if we have to." Break things. If only he knew how prophetic those words would be. The changes came swiftly. First, he canceled our weekly architecture review meetings, calling them excessive technical navel-gazing. Then he began the layoffs. Entire teams dissolved overnight. Senior engineers who had been with the company since its founding were escorted out by security, carrying boxes of personal items and years of institutional knowledge. I tried to warn him. I requested meetings. I sent detailed emails explaining our system's complexity and the risks of hasty changes. Each time, I was brushed aside. "Thanks for your input, tech specialist," he'd say, despite my title being Systems Architecture Director. "But we need to think bigger picture here." In meetings, he'd interrupt my explanations with, "Let's keep things high level," or, "We don't need to get into the weeds." When I persisted, trying to explain critical dependencies, he'd sigh dramatically and check his watch. The final straw came when he promoted Derek, a junior developer who'd been with us for only 8 months, to lead a complete overhaul of our core infrastructure. Derek was bright but inexperienced. When I questioned the decision, Ryan smiled that condescending smile. "And we need fresh thinking. Sometimes too much experience can be a handicap." The following day, Friday at 4:45 p.m., I was called into HR. A representative I'd never met sat beside Ryan. They had prepared a severance package. My position was being eliminated in the new organizational structure. I was no longer aligned with the pace of innovation they were pursuing. I signed the paperwork without argument. I cleaned out my desk while most of my colleagues were already gone for the weekend. I handed in my badge to security. I walked to my car in the nearly empty parking garage, and I smiled. Because there was something Ryan Holloway didn't know. Something HR had overlooked. Something the acquisition team had failed to discover in their due diligence. My patent, the intellectual property agreement, the licensing terms, the system architecture I had designed and patented was the heart of ZentraCore. It powered 86% of our internal systems and client-facing applications. The license agreement granted the company rights to use my patented architecture for a specified term, and that term expired on Sunday at midnight. When I got home, I drafted a careful email to the legal department. I reminded them of the expiration, quoted the relevant sections of our agreement, and highlighted the penalties for unauthorized use of patented technology. I noted that I would be open to negotiating a new license agreement if they wished to contact me. I clicked send and poured myself a glass of wine. Then I turned off my phone and enjoyed my weekend. Monday morning, 8:07 a.m. That's when it happened. The system's internal clock recognized that the license validation had failed, and the automated protocols I had built triggered a graceful but complete shutdown. Emergency systems remained functional, but everything else, from the client portal to the internal communication system, displayed the same message. License expired. Please contact system administrator. My phone began buzzing incessantly. Texts, calls, voicemails, all from Zentracor numbers. I ignored them all except for one, an email from Diane in legal. Ms. Fam. We urgently need to discuss the license agreement for your patented architecture. Please call me at your earliest convenience to arrange a meeting. I waited until noon before I called back. Diane answered on the first ring. Anne, thank you for returning my call, she said, the relief evident in her voice. We have a situation. I'm aware, I replied calmly. The license expired yesterday, as outlined in my email on Friday. Yes, we received your notification. Unfortunately, it seems this information wasn't properly tracked in our system. The entire executive team is in emergency meetings. Our clients are furious. The stock has dropped 12% already this morning. That sounds challenging. We need you to come in. Today. Now. If possible. To discuss terms for a new agreement. I considered this for a moment. I'll be there at 2 o'clock. I took my time getting ready. I wore my best suit, charcoal gray with a subtle red pinstripe, and the expensive heels I reserved for special occasions. I applied my makeup with care. This wasn't just a business meeting, it was a statement. When I walked through Zentracor's lobby at exactly 2 o'clock, the receptionist's eyes widened. She immediately called upstairs, and within moments, Diane from legal appeared, looking harried. Thank you for coming, and we've set up in the conference room on 4. The elevator ride was silent. When the doors opened, I saw a scene of controlled chaos. People hurried through the corridors with urgent expressions. Raised voices came from behind closed doors. The normal hum of productivity had been replaced by the unmistakable buzz of crisis. In the conference room sat the entire legal team, the CTO who had survived Ryan's purge, and 2 board members I recognized from my previous negotiations. Ryan Holloway was conspicuously absent. Ms. Fam, began the senior counsel. Thank you for joining us on such short notice. We'd like to discuss a new licensing agreement for your patented architecture. I placed my portfolio on the table and took a seat. I'm listening. We propose renewing under the same terms as the previous agreement, effective immediately, to resolve the current interruption. I smiled politely. I'm afraid those terms no longer reflect the value of the intellectual property. I've prepared an alternative proposal. I opened my portfolio and distributed copies of my terms. $1.5 million annually for the license, public acknowledgement of my patent and its role in the company's operations, and complete technical control over any modifications to the system. The room fell silent as they reviewed the document. The senior counsel was the first to speak. This is 10 times the previous licensing fee. Yes, I agreed. And considerably less than what you'll lose if your systems remain offline for another day. This is extortion, one of the board members muttered. This is business. I corrected him. I'm offering a premium product at market value. You're free to decline and develop an alternative solution. I estimate that would take approximately 8 months, assuming you can reassemble a qualified engineering team. The CTO winced. He knew I was right. The door burst open, and Ryan Holloway stormed in. His perfectly styled hair was disheveled, his bright suit wrinkled. For once, he wasn't smiling. What the hell is going on? He demanded, then froze when he saw me. What is she doing here? Ms. Fam owns the patent for our core system architecture, Diane explained. We're negotiating a new license agreement. Ryan's face reddened. Patent? What patent? Nobody told me about any patent. I met his gaze calmly. It was in the documentation during the acquisition. Page 347 of the Technical Assets Report, I believe. The room fell silent again. Everyone knew that Ryan had boasted about never reading anything longer than a one-page executive summary. He turned to me, attempting to regain his composure. Look, Anne, there's been a misunderstanding. Your termination was part of a broader restructuring. Nothing personal. If you'd like to come back. I'm not interested in employment, I interrupted. I'm here as a business owner negotiating a licensing agreement. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. You developed that system while working for this company. It belongs to Zentra Core. I opened my portfolio again and pulled out another document, the original agreement signed by Marcus and the board, acknowledging my ownership of the patent and establishing the licensing terms. As you can see, the company has already legally recognized my ownership. I developed the core architecture on my own time, using my own resources. The company licensed it from me with full knowledge and consent of previous leadership. Ryan's face cycled through several emotions: disbelief, anger, fear, and finally, a desperate attempt at charm. And, let's be reasonable, we can work something out. I'm sure there's a place for you here. A promotion, perhaps? VP of Technology? My terms are on the table, I replied. This isn't personal, Ryan. It's legal. I placed one more document before him, a copy of my termination notice with his signature at the bottom. You fired me because I was, and I quote, no longer aligned with the pace of innovation. I'm simply proving that innovation has value. The senior counsel cleared his throat. Mr. Holloway, I suggest we discuss this privately. Ryan was escorted out, his face a mask of barely contained rage. The legal team asked for time to review my proposal. I agreed to wait. An hour later, Diane returned with the senior counsel. The board has called an emergency session, she informed me. They've requested your presence. I was led to the executive floor, where I'd rarely had reason to visit. In the boardroom sat the entire board of directors, looking grave. Ryan was nowhere to be seen. The chairwoman, Eleanor Stevens, addressed me directly. Ms. Pham, we owe you an apology. It's clear that your contributions to this company have been undervalued and overlooked during the transition. We'd like to hear your perspective on what's happened. For the next hour, I explained the technical architecture I'd built, its importance to the company's operations, and the risks of the rapid changes Ryan had been implementing. I detailed the dismissals of key technical staff and the impossible timelines being imposed on critical projects. It's not just about my patent, I concluded. It's about respecting expertise. Technology companies cannot be run by people who take pride in not understanding technology. That's not disruption. It's destruction. Eleanor nodded slowly. We've temporarily relieved Mr. Holloway of his duties pending a full investigation. The board has authorized me to accept your licensing terms, with one modification. We'd like to engage you as a consultant for the next 90 days to help stabilize the system and advise on technical leadership. My consulting rate was added to the licensing agreement. The documents were signed, and by 5 p.m., I had instructed the system to validate the new license. Screens throughout the building flickered as systems came back online. A collective sigh of relief was almost audible. As I packed up my portfolio, Eleanor approached me privately. Why didn't you warn us sooner? She asked. I tried, I replied. I sent documented concerns to the board 3 times in the past month. Each time, I received a form response that the board had full confidence in the new leadership team. She had the grace to look embarrassed. We've learned an expensive lesson today. The next morning, an all-staff email announced the temporary leadership change and, notably, included a paragraph acknowledging my patent and its critical role in the company's technology. My inbox filled with messages from former colleagues, some congratulatory, some asking if their jobs might be reinstated. Over the next few weeks, I worked as a consultant, helping to repair the damage and establish better processes. I created a comprehensive proposal for how the company should protect intellectual property and technical talent going forward. I recommended several of the fired engineers be rehired. Most importantly, I insisted that any future CEO have a strong technical background or at least a proven record of deferring to technical expertise. On my last day as a consultant, a young intern approached me as I was leaving the building. "Ms. Pham," she said nervously, "I just wanted to thank you." "For what?" I asked. "For setting a precedent. I'm studying computer science, and seeing you stand up for yourself, for your work, it matters. It really matters." I smiled and handed her my card. "When you graduate, call me. I might have something for you." I didn't return to Zentracor after my consulting period ended. Instead, I founded my own consulting firm, working with companies to build sustainable systems and respect the humans who create them. I set my own terms, choose my own clients, and never compromise on values. Ryan Holloway eventually landed at another company, though in a considerably less prestigious role. I hear he's actually taken coding classes. Perhaps he learned something after all. As for me, I never wanted power for its own sake. I wanted recognition. And when they wouldn't give me that, I built my own table instead of begging for a seat at theirs. The patent that shut down Zentracor now hangs framed in my office. Not as a trophy, but as a reminder. In a world where technical expertise is often undervalued and overlooked, sometimes the most powerful code you can write is the one that says, "No more."